Felix Verdejo was a rising star, a diamond in the rough. Born on May 19, 1993, in the heart of San Juan, Puerto Rico, Felix's journey from humble beginnings to international fame was a tale of determination, talent, and hard work. By his early 20s, Felix had become a symbol of hope, a beacon for a nation that saw him as the next great champion. Growing up in the vibrant yet challenging streets of San Juan, Felix found an escape in boxing. His family supported his passion, and his community watched with pride as he dedicated himself to the sport. By the time he represented Puerto Rico in the 2012 Olympics, he was already a hero in the making. Though he didn't win a medal, his performance captured the hearts of many. Felix earned his nickname El Diamante, meaning the diamond. He was sharp, strong, and unbreakable, or so it seemed. With his quick footwork and powerful punches, he became a force to be reckoned with. His undefeated record brought fame, fortune, and a lifestyle few could imagine. But behind the glittering facade of success, there were cracks in the diamond that no one noticed or perhaps chose to ignore. With fame came temptation. Felix was no longer just a boxer, he was a celebrity. He attended high-profile events, rubbed shoulders with influential figures, and lived a life of luxury. But the more he rose, the more complicated his personal life became. His fame brought scrutiny, and whispers about his behavior began to circulate. While Felix appeared untouchable in the ring, his personal life was far more chaotic. Married to his high school sweetheart, he presented the image of a family man. But behind the scenes, things were far from perfect. Felix's life was filled with secrets that would eventually lead to his downfall. Keishla Rodríguez was a 27-year-old woman full of life and dreams. Born and raised in Puerto Rico, she was described by those who knew her as kind, compassionate, and hard-working. She worked at a local business, loved spending time with her family, and had dreams of building a bright future for herself. But her life took an unexpected turn when she met Felix Verdejo. Their relationship began in secret. Felix was a married man, but his connection with Keishla was undeniable. Over time, their relationship deepened, though it remained hidden from the public eye. For years, the two carried on their affair, but it was far from a fairy tale. Keishla's family later revealed that she faced emotional struggles in the relationship, hinting at control, manipulation, and pain. Despite the challenges, Keishla held on, perhaps out of love, hope, or fear. But the balance between their private lives and Felix's public persona was fragile, and it was about to break. April 29, 2021, began like any other day for Keishla Rodríguez. She spent the morning at home, spoke to her family, and went about her usual routine. But that afternoon, she received a phone call that would change everything. It was Felix. He wanted to meet her. What exactly was said in that conversation remains unclear, but Keishla left her home that day, and she would never return. Her family grew concerned when she didn't answer her phone later that evening. By the next morning, their worry turned to panic. Days passed, and the search for Keishla intensified. Her family pleaded for answers, while the public speculated about her sudden disappearance. Then, on May 1, 2021, their worst fears were confirmed. A body was found in the San Juan Lagoon, weighted down and lifeless. It was Keishla. The discovery sent shockwaves through Puerto Rico and beyond. But as the investigation unfolded, the story became even more horrifying. All evidence pointed to one person, Felix Verdejo. Keishla's death was not just a tragedy, it was a betrayal. The young woman who once dreamed of a bright future had been silenced in the most brutal way imaginable. As investigators pieced together the events leading to her death, a chilling picture began to emerge, one of power, control, and desperation. How did a man who seemed to have it all, a thriving career, fame, and fortune, become the prime suspect in such a heinous crime? What led to this devastating outcome? And most importantly, what can we learn from this tragic story? In the next part, we uncover the investigation that led to Felix Verdejo's downfall and the details of a case that shocked the world. Stay with us as we continue this heartbreaking story. Felix Verdejo and Keishla Rodríguez's relationship began quietly, away from the prying eyes of the public. For years, it existed in the shadows, hidden beneath layers of secrecy and lies. Their connection was undeniable, but it was far from a love story, more of a tangled web of passion, control, and heartbreak. Felix was no ordinary man. By the time he met Keishla, he was already a national hero in Puerto Rico, celebrated for his talent and charisma. He had a wife, a growing family, and a public image that projected success and stability. But beneath that image was a man drawn to the thrill of living on the edge. Keishla, on the other hand, was grounded. She wasn't from a world of fame or excess. She was a young woman with dreams of her own, focused on building a life of stability and happiness. But Felix's charm was hard to resist. He promised her the world, love, adventure, and a connection that felt electric. For Keishla, the relationship was intoxicating, even as it became increasingly complicated. While Felix presented himself as a devoted family man to the world, his time with Keishla told a different story. Their relationship was built on secrecy. Felix's status as a married man meant Keishla could never be part of his public life, and the weight of that secrecy began to take its toll. Over time, Keishla's family and friends began to notice changes in her. She became more withdrawn, often distracted by the demands of her relationship with Felix. Those close to her worried, but Keishla kept most of her struggles to herself. Perhaps she believed things would change. Perhaps she believed Felix would one day choose her. As the years passed, the relationship grew increasingly strained. Felix's position of power, both as a public figure and within their private dynamic, created a sense of imbalance. According to those who later spoke about their relationship, Keishla felt trapped. She was deeply in love, but the love came at a cost. Keishla's world was small compared to Felix's, and that dynamic played into their relationship. Friends of Keishla would later describe moments of control and manipulation, signs that Felix was not just the charismatic athlete the public adored, but also a man struggling to reconcile his dual lives. There were moments of happiness, moments that reminded Keishla why she stayed. Felix could be warm, kind, and attentive. He promised her that one day, things would be different. He made her believe that their love, despite its flaws, was worth fighting for. Still, the promises were often broken. Felix's public life remained unchanged, and Keishla was left waiting in the shadows. Over time, her hope began to fade, replaced by feelings of doubt and despair. The relationship that once felt so full of possibility now felt suffocating. In April 2021, Keishla's life took a dramatic turn. She discovered she was pregnant, a revelation that would change everything. For Keishla, the pregnancy was both a source of hope and a source of fear. She believed it would force Felix to finally make a choice. But she also knew it could escalate the tensions between them. When Keishla told Felix about the pregnancy, it marked a turning point in their relationship. The news was not met with joy or excitement. Instead, it deepened the conflict between them. Felix, whose public image depended on his carefully controlled life, saw the pregnancy as a threat, a risk that could unravel everything he had built. The days that followed were filled with tension. Keishla's family noticed her growing anxiety, but she remained silent about the details of her struggles. Perhaps she hoped Felix would change. Perhaps she believed there was still a way forward. But the reality was far more tragic than anyone could have imagined. The relationship between Felix and Keishla was a storm waiting to break. It was a story of love, control, and desperation, a story that, in the end, would lead to unthinkable tragedy. As the investigation into Keishla's death unfolded, the world would learn the devastating truth about what happened when their love turned deadly. April 29, 2021, began like any other day in Puerto Rico. The bustling streets of San Juan were filled with the hum of life, cars honking, people chatting, the everyday rhythm of the island. But for one family, it was the beginning of a nightmare. Keishla Rodríguez, a 27-year-old woman full of life and potential, would go missing that day, and her absence would send ripples through the community. Keishla was supposed to meet someone that day, someone she trusted, someone she had known for years. That someone was Felix Vertigo. According to her family, Keishla had confided in them about the pregnancy, and they knew she planned to speak with Felix about their future. But what they didn't know was that this conversation would be her last. Keishla's family reported that she left her home that morning, carrying nothing more than her phone and her hope for a resolution. She believed Felix would take responsibility for their unborn child, but she also knew how volatile their relationship had become. Despite her doubts, she went to meet him, trusting that this meeting would bring clarity. Surveillance footage would later confirm that Keishla met Felix near a bridge in San Juan. This would be the last time anyone would see her alive. Details about what happened next would only come to light after an intense investigation, pieced together from phone records, witness testimonies, and surveillance footage. According to federal prosecutors, Felix's actions that day were calculated and deliberate. 10:30 a.m., Keishla leaves her home. 11:15 a.m., surveillance footage captures Keishla meeting Felix near her home. 12 p.m., Felix is seen driving toward the Teodoro Moscoso Bridge. Authorities believe that Felix, accompanied by an accomplice, drove Keishla to the bridge under the pretense of having a private conversation. But what unfolded next was far from what Keishla or anyone else could have imagined. According to the investigation, Felix and his accomplice subdued Keishla during the drive. She was restrained, and her phone, a lifeline that could have saved her, was thrown out of the vehicle to ensure she couldn't call for help. It was a cold and calculated move, one that hinted at the tragic fate awaiting her. Once they reached the bridge, prosecutors allege that Felix injected Keishla with an unknown substance in an attempt to render her unconscious. It was a horrifying escalation, one that painted a picture of a man desperate to silence her, desperate to protect the image he had carefully constructed over the years. What happened next was an unthinkable act of betrayal. Felix and his accomplice are believed to have tied Keishla's body to a heavy object, ensuring she would sink, and then thrown her into the water below the bridge. It was a calculated attempt to erase her existence, to make sure that she would never tell her story. Back at home, Keishla's family was growing increasingly anxious. Hours turned into a day, and there was no word from her. She wasn't answering her phone, and no one had seen her since she left to meet Felix. Her family knew something was wrong. By the time her family reported her missing, it was already too late. Keishla's body had been discovered by a passerby on May 1, floating in the San Jose Lagoon. The discovery confirmed their worst fears and marked the beginning of a high-profile investigation that would expose the dark truths behind Felix Verdejo's carefully curated image. The discovery of Keishla's body sent shockwaves through Puerto Rico. This wasn't just a case of a missing person, it was now a homicide investigation. The public was horrified, and the pressure was on the authorities to bring those responsible to justice. As details of Keishla's death emerged, Felix Verdejo became the prime suspect. His connection to Keishla was undeniable, and the evidence began to mount against him. The tragic story of Keishla Rodríguez is one of love turned to betrayal, trust shattered by violence. Her death was a devastating loss, not just for her family but for an entire community that had once celebrated Felix Verdejo as a hero. The truth of what happened on that bridge would soon be revealed in court, but for Keishla's loved ones, no verdict could ever bring her back. The discovery of Keishla Rodríguez's body on May 1, 2021, was a turning point that transformed a missing persons case into a full-blown homicide investigation. The Puerto Rican authorities, along with the FBI, began piecing together the events that led to her tragic death. Time was of the essence, and every lead mattered. The autopsy revealed chilling details. Keishla had suffered blunt force trauma, and there were traces of an unknown substance in her system pointing to a deliberate and violent end. But the most damning discovery was the presence of physical restraints and a heavy object tied to her body, clearly intended to ensure she wouldn't surface. The gruesome nature of Keishla's death sent shockwaves through Puerto Rico. The public demanded answers, and the authorities promised swift action. Almost immediately, suspicion fell on Felix Verdejo. His connection to Keishla was well known to those close to her. He was the father of her unborn child, and their relationship, though hidden from the public, had been marred by conflict and secrecy. But it wasn't just hearsay that led investigators to Felix, it was hard evidence. Investigators uncovered a series of text messages exchanged between Felix and Keishla in the days leading up to her disappearance. These messages, combined with phone location data, placed Felix at the scene where Keishla was last seen alive. Surveillance footage from toll booths and nearby businesses further corroborated his movements on the day of her disappearance. But the most incriminating evidence came from a key witness, Felix's accomplice. During the investigation, Felix's accomplice came forward and provided a chilling account of the events that led to Keishla's death. According to the testimony, Felix had meticulously planned the crime, involving his accomplice in the abduction, assault, and ultimate disposal of Keishla's body. The accomplice described how Keishla was restrained, injected with a substance, and thrown into the water. These revelations not only confirmed the authorities' suspicions but painted a grim picture of premeditation and cold-blooded violence. On May 2, 2021, just days after Keishla's body was discovered, Felix Verdejo turned himself into federal authorities. He was immediately charged with multiple federal crimes, including carjacking resulting in death, kidnapping resulting in death, and the intentional killing of an unborn child. Each charge carried the possibility of the death penalty. The public's reaction was a mixture of shock, anger, and grief. Felix Verdejo had once been a symbol of pride for Puerto Rico, but now, he was seen as a man who betrayed not only his loved ones but an entire island. As the case went to trial, the courtroom became a battleground for justice. Prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence against Felix, including the testimony of his accomplice, surveillance footage, and phone records. Each piece of evidence painted a damning picture of a man who had meticulously planned and executed a heinous crime. Keishla's family attended every session, their presence a powerful reminder of the life that was taken too soon. For them, the trial was more than just a legal proceeding, it was a fight to ensure that Keishla's voice was heard and her memory honored. Meanwhile, Felix's defense team argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that the testimony of his accomplice was unreliable. But as the trial progressed, it became increasingly clear that the weight of the evidence was overwhelming. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated on the fate of Felix Verdejo. On insert date, the verdict was announced. Felix Verdejo was found guilty of all charges. The decision brought a measure of closure to Keishla's family, but the pain of her loss remained. For Keishla's loved ones, justice had been served, but it could never replace the vibrant, loving woman they had lost. Keishla Rodríguez's story is one of heartbreak and tragedy, but it is also a reminder of the resilience of those who loved her. Her family continues to honor her memory, advocating for justice and raising awareness about violence against women. Keishla Rodríguez's story is heartbreaking, but it is, unfortunately, not an isolated case. Around the world, countless women face violence and abuse, often at the hands of those they trust the most. Her tragic death forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our society, about gender-based violence, power dynamics in relationships, and the importance of speaking out when something feels wrong. 1 in 3 women worldwide experiences physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. In Puerto Rico alone, over 60 women were killed in 2021 due to domestic violence. The numbers are staggering, but behind every statistic is a real person, a daughter, a sister, a friend, or a mother, just like Keishla. Her story reminds us that no one is immune to the dangers of abuse, regardless of their background, status, or circumstances. Keishla's relationship with Felix Verdejo highlights the importance of recognizing warning signs in relationships. Secrecy, emotional manipulation, and controlling behavior are all red flags that should never be ignored. If something feels off, trust your instincts. Sometimes, the people we love the most can also be the ones who harm us. But it's not just about individuals recognizing these signs. Friends and family members must also stay vigilant. If you notice a loved one withdrawing, showing signs of distress, or being controlled by their partner, reach out. A simple conversation can sometimes make a world of difference. As a society, we have a responsibility to create environments where victims feel safe to come forward. Too often, women suffer in silence, fearing judgment, shame, or retaliation. We must work together to change this, to let victims know they are not alone and that there is help available. By supporting these organizations, advocating for stronger protections, and educating ourselves and others, we can help prevent tragedies like Keishla's from happening again. The trial of Felix Verdejo also underscores the importance of justice and accountability. When crimes like this occur, the perpetrators must be held responsible, not only to provide closure to the victims' families but also to send a clear message that violence will not be tolerated. Justice is not just about punishment, it's about setting a precedent for change. Keishla's family fought tirelessly for justice, and their courage is an example for all of us. It's a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable pain, there is strength to be found in standing up for what is right. Education is key to preventing future tragedies. Teaching young people about healthy relationships, respect, and boundaries can help break the cycle of violence. It starts with open conversations, teaching boys and girls alike that violence is never the answer and that every individual deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. We also need to address systemic issues: poverty, lack of access to education, and inadequate mental health resources that often contribute to cycles of violence. By addressing these root causes, we can create a safer, more equitable world for everyone. Though Keishla's life was tragically cut short, her story has sparked a movement. Her memory lives on in the hearts of those who loved her and in the collective fight for justice and equality. Every time we speak out against violence, support a victim, or educate someone about healthy relationships, we honor Keishla's legacy. Her story reminds us that even in the darkest moments, we have the power to create change. Together, we can build a future where no one else has to endure the pain and loss that Keishla and her family faced. If Keishla's story has moved you, don't let it stop here. Share her story. Talk to your friends and family about the importance of healthy relationships and standing up against violence. If you or someone you know is in danger, reach out for help. There are people and organizations ready to support you. Your voice can make a difference. Like this video to spread awareness, share it to amplify Keishla's story, and subscribe to this channel for more stories that matter. Together, we can shine a light on the issues that need our attention and work toward a better world. In loving memory of Keishla Rodríguez. Let her story inspire change.